So having rabbits, definitely one of the more expensive parts is feeding them. So today we're going to show you how we take this cup of wheat and turn it into this tray of fodder to help feed our rabbits in the winter.
Hey guys, today we are starting something exciting. And as you can hear from the sheep behind me, we're behind schedule doing chores, but that's okay. So if you followed along on our journey at all with our rabbits, you will know that in the past we've explored a lot of different alternatives to feeding them, whether it was fodder, grains, all sorts of things. And we slipped back into that terrible habit of just feeding pellets and hay because it was convenient, it was simple, and well, it basically did pretty good for the rabbits. But we started to notice that the quality of the feed maybe is depleting a little bit. There's a little bit more soy in it. And really, I don't think the rabbits are eating it as well as they could. And so we made the decision to go back to growing fodder. So we're going to take you inside. We're going to show you a little bit of our setup and how we're planning to roll with this. It's kind of learning curve because we have a lot more rabbits right now than we should have or need to have. So it's growing a lot of fodder. So we're going to kind of balance it and learn as we go here, but we're essentially following the same methods that we used to use. So let's go on this journey, show you how we do it. And oh, now the ponies are even upset. Everybody wants to be looked after this morning, but we're going to show you how much these rabbits really enjoy the wheat fodder.
So when you look at these little chunks and realize like that's going to one rabbit, that's quite a bit of biomass. That's quite a bit of food. And I think that's the real take-home positive to doing this is, yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes space. Yes, it takes effort. But you're converting a very small amount of grains into a much, much larger amount of actual food. I mean, rabbits, this is exactly the sort of stuff they like to eat. And they do eat the whole thing, root mat and all. So there's really, on the rabbit side of things, not a lot of waste. So kind of a win-win in our opinion. So right now I am in our bathroom, and as you can kind of see, we have our fodder system in our bathtub because we don't use the bathtub a lot because we have a separate shower. So we figured, just to keep this simple, this was a great spot to do this. And we've already got this started. So we have been we started this 8 days ago, and we are now on the first day of feeding our fodder to the rabbits. So we're going to kind of take you through what this system looks like, how it operates, and then eventually take some out and feed it to the rabbits. All right, so we're going to start on the top rack, and this is where we have basically our grains or wheat sprouting or soaking in 3 separate jars. So this is a 3-tray system. So we have 3 jars, and basically we have jar 1 here with the green lid. That's obviously being soaked. We soak for 24 hours, then rinse it out. Then it moves to jar 2. Well, it stays in the same jar, but jar 1 moves over to the spot of jar 2. Basically, they're still sprouting in there, but we only rinse them and then drain them completely. And then we have the 3rd day, which you can see the amount of growth of root hairs here. So this jar will be the jar that we empty out, and we'll kind of show you that here in a second. But we're going to empty out into the growing trays, and it will start its journey along the growing rack. So obviously for this step, where we have them in the jars, that's 3 separate days of them being up here. They don't require light at this point. Now, in here you can see the window. They still get light, but they don't have to be under the grow light, which of course is the next tier. So we have 2 grow lights on here. They're full spectrum lighting, and so far so good. It's working quite well. This tier is our last tier. So this is basically at this point ready to feed. Now, getting back into this, we probably didn't water as much as we should when we got back into the swing of things. We find that we have to water twice a day, and that really gets us optimal growth. So this is a little sparser than we'd like. You can see here, as I pulled this one out from the 2nd tier, that this is obviously a day behind. It's benefited a little bit from being watered more frequently, and you can kind of see the difference in growth. Now, we have a bit of an interesting system here because this is all gravity fed. And what we've done, because obviously you can't have water drip onto your grow lights, we've put the last day on top and the second last day right below that so that they benefit the most from the lighting, which means we actually start with our seedling tray or our seed tray on the third shelf. So this is basically tray number 1. And you can see this has been in here for basically 24 hours. This is ready to be moved to the next level. It's dripping a little bit on me, but there's fairly decent growth. So this is day 2 of the system, and you can see that's with a bit more watering. This is actually growing quite well. And then I'll pull out tray number 3. And same thing. This is basically this is the day we sort of realized that we needed to water a bit more. But we're getting decent growth. And so this is to the point that this will now move up to shelf number 2. So we're showing you this rack basically at its full capacity. At the end of the 8 days, this is what we've got growing so far. So to get to the next step, we have to take these off the shelf and get them prepared to go out to the rabbits before we can kind of move everything ahead one more step. So basically what I'm going to do is flip this fodder over and I'm going to cut it up into sections. Now, the top looks really lush on this, but we have found that we've had to up the amount of grain in each one of the cells for each day. So we don't have as much root mat on here as we would like to see, but it's still going to work. And this is sort of the playing around with it, trying to get it to that optimal level of sprouting, growing a root mat, and staying together as a good, easy to feed chunk. So you can see we've got a fairly decent root mat here. And all I'm going to do is cut this up roughly as I can into 8 portions. Usually cut it into 8 or 6, and a good sharp knife is definitely handy.
So basically what you're seeing here is 2 pounds worth of grain made into this fodder. Now that basically equates to about 50 cents a day to feed our 18 rabbits. And that is not too bad when you consider we've got a 88-pound bag of feed that we're buying for $22. So all in all, definitely less expensive than rabbit pellets. Hi, Thuggy. You hungry? Huh? Hi, Thug. Oh, there's a cat above you that wants some attention. Are you going to try this new food, Thug? We're not sure if Thug's had it. He is the rabbit that we picked up last fall for breeding purposes, just because we had the opportunity to get some genetics. So we're not sure if he's had fodder before. He's been kind of a learning experience for us, but he looks hungry, so I'm betting he's going to eat it. Yeah, what about you? Huh? What are you trying to tell us? You want some attention? It's always a cat wanting attention around here. Hey, kitty, kitty, kitty. Kitty, kitty, kitty. There's another kitty, kitty, kitty. Try some? What do you think of that? He's not sure. Oh, first nibble. Oh, is it going to be a win?
Looks like it so far.
Here she comes. What do you think, Rose? One thing that we found previously when we've been giving these to the bunnies in the past, they eat everything. They eat the greens first, then they eat the seeds and the mat, and really there's often nothing left, which is excellent. And by sprouting it, you're really kind of opening up the nutrients in there for the rabbits. So they're getting a lot more out of that than if we just gave them the little quarter cup of grain that it would have been. To be honest, it wasn't even a quarter cup of grain in there. Little Thuggy has figured it out. He's nibbling away. And here's Tulip. Tulip is our oldest bunny. She's 5 this year. She actually was James's pet. Still is, I guess you could say. But she has done this before, and look at her in there. She knows this is the good stuff. Hi, girl. Are you excited to have that back? Oh yeah, that's going to be gone in like no time. And eventually they all will react the same way and they will all dive in. It just takes them a little bit to kind of figure it out sometimes. But you can see her in there. She is loving it. Hi, old girl. Tulip is demonstrating exactly what I mean. I might actually interrupt her eating here to show you. They're going to eat the greens down to the mat, But they don't leave the mat. They're still going to eat that after. Let's see if I can show you. There you can see what she's doing there? She's going to eat all the greens, and then she'll come back to eat that root mat after. She's doing exactly what I want them all to do.
So now that these are emptied out, one important step here is I'm going to take and wash these, because sprouting grains is a little dirty, and you don't want to get too much of a buildup of bacteria and that sort of stuff, because you're obviously using water. So this is why you need to wash it, because we have holes in the bottom of these trays, because it is a gravity fed system. And when we get this set up again, we'll show you what we mean and how it waters. But essentially, if the trays are too dirty, you don't want all of that kind of contaminating everything else. It's time to finish things up. I've already moved what was on this rack up to the final rack, so it'll be under the lights for the day. And lesson learned, we're not going to water these anymore, because we now know the proper watering regime for the house and all that other stuff. But the next step is to basically shift all these around. So I'm going to move the ones from the bottom, which you can see have actually started to grow pretty decently, into the second shelf. And then it's as simple as just moving the other two shelves down. So next step is the jars. So this is jar number 3. It's been in the jar for 3 days. We're going to take it over to the sink, use some water to get these out so we don't damage the roots too much, because this hasn't really formed a mat. And then those will go on the shelf, and then we rinse and drain the remaining jars, and we got to go get more grain after that. Potentially this jar has sat a few hours too long, because it has grown to a decent size in here, but it should come out all right. So if it gets ahead of you, it's not ideal, but you can use a butter knife to help break the mat up a bit. And you're trying not to damage it too much, but
there we go.
I'll go back to using water. The reason why I'm doing this in the sink is A, catches anything, but B, this is my first step of watering. So I'm loosening the mats up a bit so that these kind of cover fairly decent across the bottom. And I'm taking another container, put it under it to catch the water, and onto the shelf it goes.
And you can see there the water drips down onto the next one, and this is why keeping those dishes clean is very important.
So next is day 2. I'm going to rinse these, drain them, and then take the lid off and just put the metal lid on it to keep the moisture in. It's really exactly like sprouting to eat for human consumption, except it's wheat. And then the last one is to drain what's been soaking. So you can kind of see it's almost fermenting a little bit there, but we're going to drain it, rinse it, and put it on the shelf again for another day of sprouting. So next step is to basically start day 1. Now, we were putting in basically everything that's on this rack behind me. We put in a little bit less than half a pound. And we're kind of finding after the full 8 days, it's not quite enough. That was one thing when we pulled the mats apart, the root mats apart. They were still pretty open and airy, which is good in one sense, but means we didn't have quite as much biomass in there as we were hoping for. So we're going to up this to 3/4 of a pound, which basically works out to one of these, for us, we've already weighed this out, one of these small containers or cups. So we'll just put that in there. Yeah. So this is a quart jar that we're using. So now that we've got the 3/4 of a pound of wheat berries in there, we're going to basically soak it, put the lid on, going to give it a bit of a rinse, then soak it, and leave it on the shelf for the day. So when you look at these little chunks and realize like that's going to one rabbit, that's quite a bit of biomass. That's quite a bit of food. And I think that's the real take-home positive to doing this is, yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes space. Yes, it takes effort. But you're converting a very small amount of grains into a much, much larger amount of actual food. I mean, rabbits, this is exactly the type of stuff they like to eat. And they do eat the whole thing, root mat and all. So there's really, on the rabbit side of things, not a lot of waste. So kind of a win-win in our opinion.
So this is Thug 2 days later. So the first day he was a little unsure as to what it was, but look at him go now.